Good evening. Whoa, sorry about that, everybody out there. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is our monthly Board of Education meeting. Today is April 20th, and tonight's Board of Education meeting will get started as our president is unable to be here tonight as she is traveling. So in her stead is our vice president, Mr. Brian Lynch, and I turn that over to Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. Could everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. As Dr. Douglas stated, President Dale is traveling tonight, so she's unable to be here at the meeting. We'll move right on to the minutes. There's 2 sets of minutes to approve tonight. Could I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments regarding either set of minutes? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Thank you. Next section is 3. We have one time during the board meeting for community questions and comments. There is a 3-minute time limit. And if you are called and if you have a comment, that's fine. Please state your name, address, and then you have 3 minutes to present your concern. So is there any community questions and comments tonight? Okay, moving on, we'll go right on to item 4. We'll turn it over to Catherine for a report from our student representative.
All right, so it's an exciting time to be a senior. The class of 22 wrapped up our senior service project, which the seniors made Spring Has Sprung greeting cards, and hundreds of cards were delivered to the Meals on Wheels program to be delivered to clients along with their meals. Prom planning is in full swing, so start spreading the news. The class of 22 will host their prom on Saturday, May 21st, with an Empire State of Mind, a black tie affair theme. Lots of exciting plans in place, and tickets will go on sale the week of May 9th. Senior Week will be held the week of May 16th, giving the seniors a final chance to dress up the part with some fun theme days such as Your Future's So Bright You Gotta Wear Shades and Where Are You Going Wednesday to model their future college, military, or career apparel. And the senior trip planned for Friday evening of June 10th will board the Seneca Legacy for a senior sunset cruise. And senior day planning is also underway for Tuesday, June 14th, which is the last day of regular classes. And we're looking forward to Mother Nature's cooperating so that the 22s can graduate on the 22nd. There's also 3,000 hours for the yearbook that we just finished yesterday. And the Pops concert is June 11th, the orchestra concert is June 8th, and the GRP banquet and elections will be held in May. And the National Honor Society is hosting its annual Spring Service Project on Wednesday, today, from 6 to 8 p.m. in the cafeteria. And this year's project enhances the lives of residents for the LCOR Dementia Unit. And there are 65 residents in the unit, and many of them don't have anything hanging on the walls or the rooms for their friends that their friends and family visit. So National Honor Society is purchasing brightly colored blankets, creating a 3-dimensional large origami wall for each resident's room. And additionally, the NHS is donating several stuffed therapy pets and dolls, as well as Alzheimer-friendly puzzles, fidgets, activity mittens, and picture books for the residents. And students are creating brightly colored mobiles for the common areas as well. And the artwork, blankets, and objects will bring color, joy, and cheer to the LCOR residents to remind them that they are loved. Also, the National Honor Society has also established 4 new $500 scholarships this year for the graduating seniors called the Pillar Awards. And these scholarships will be given to the 4 students who teachers feel best demonstrate all 4 pillars of National Honor Society: scholarship, character, service, and citizenship. And faculty will nominate and vote on student recipients in May. And the band banquet and Hershey Park trip will be in June. And thanks. I have to attend to the National Honor Society project, so will the board please excuse me?
You have a busy night. Thank you, Catherine, for the update. And it's hard to believe you guys are planning senior activities, senior week activities, and graduation already, but I know it's right around the corner. Thank you for helping out with the Honor Society. We'll move on to the next item, the budget presentation and discussion tonight.
Okay, we have a green light, I think. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Board of Education, Horseheads Central School District community, tonight is the culmination of over probably 2.5 months of budget development going through the process of the state of New York, and we are happy to report as a district administrative team to the Board of Education on behalf of our outstanding business department and all the people that have brought about tonight's budget presentation, the final presented budget for the 22-23 school year for the Horseheads Central School District. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, you can see the presentation on board docs. Please don't skip ahead because we have a major announcement and I know you haven't seen it yet. So on behalf of my administrative team, Katie, we are happy to bring you this budget that which we think for the entire community is a very strong and sound financial plan as we've been trying to do over the past 7 years. Ms. Pizzetti?
Good evening, everyone. We're going to just update everyone on where our budget stands based on the conversations we've had over the course of this process. All told, based on our final state budget and our projections for the expense-driven aids, we're expecting an increase in our state aid items of $1.8 million. That does include our 50% phase-in of foundation aid, projections, expense-driven aid projections for the transportation and the BOCES aids, and the remaining building aid expected for our first capital project referendum. Our tax levy limit, as we all know, is capped at the 2%, far below the current rate of inflation. Current tax base growth factor is 1.0095. And all told, once the calculation bakes out, our levy increases by $1.2 million, or 2.97%. A total maximum allowable levy limit of $41,781,717, which meets the tax cap calculation and requires a 50% simple majority vote by our community. So I've been working with the Chemung County Tax Office over the course of this process to get our assessment information, equalization rate information as they know it at this time, in order to project what this levy increase means to our community as far as the rate being how this levy is spread across our community. And based on the information that we received to date, we are expecting a decrease in our tax rate. Again, based on the information today, based on the equalization rates presented today, our tax rate could go down over 6%.
I gotta jump up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the announcement. We were sort of greeted to this today through all the hard work, and I've got to help Katie out. The numbers you are seeing are not like just rough estimates. These are conservative estimates, and as we've done in the past, we give you the conservative estimate, which is -3% to -6.3%. And you can see on a $100,000 home, we are conservatively looking at next year, if this budget were to be approved, at least on full value of at least somewhere between $52 to $110 per $100,000 decrease in taxes. For 7 years, this district, this board, this administration, this faculty and staff have put in front almost 10.31% in tax reductions on the rate, averaging 1.47 a year. We are forecasting that this continued trend is set for the next couple of years, as we said even 2 years ago. We are seeing major investment. We are seeing major companies come in, Ohio Logistics, and that is going to continue the growth, even if we head towards a recession. So this is that big news that we just put up. So we hope that the board is absolutely surprised by this, but we are one of the few districts that have put up these numbers consistently, and you'll see a chart in a few minutes. And that's what we were brought here to do. And that's what you do every day, and this is a good fiscal stewardship of the district. So as you see that, that's what we're proud of, and I think that's what our community, I would hope, would say thank you, because we don't see that often. We used to have the days of 3-4% increases a year, and we're still able to keep everything and move forward as best we can during this time, and still grow. So we want to try to, you can see why I'm elated. Superintendents don't usually get to give this type of news. But as we go through this, if you have questions, please, we will be using this like we have in our newsletters regularly to communicate that it's all about the tax rate. And you still get the star reductions as well. So that's what we wanted to emphasize. Any questions? Everybody happy? Here's our history. We try to bring you facts. The facts are very simple. This district has proposed 6.75% levy in 2006-2007. The tax rate was $19.40. But the tax rate only went up by 5% at that 0.05%. You can see the trend except for that 1 year, and that was the budget that was developed right before I came, but it was also right around the time where they're taking gas wells off the roll. But in general, everything from 2016 to the present is our budget. And here's the biggest thing. Even with all of our budgets, we have also just about completed a $94 million first project, and that's what happened to the tax rates, and we projected them to go up. We have approved the $124 million, and if we continue this trend, we are getting state money and lowering taxes, and I think that's the best any district can do. To the point, I am hopeful that we even beat that number, because my number one goal, and I think Katie knows it, is that number should become the lowest tax rate in the southern tier. Bar none, even lower than Watkins Glen, which is in the number one place. Hopefully that's what we want to try to continue to do. Thank you. Katie, all yours.
So overall, after all the adjustments and additions that were made to the budget this year, we have a proposed budget to the community of $88,470,543, which is an increase of $2.8 million or 3.3%. This budget includes all contractual obligations of our collective bargaining agreements. It includes all of our expected debt service, maintains all of our programs, and some additions that we've talked to with the board along the way. To fund the budget, we have our tax items and our state aid that we spoke of earlier. Tax items is a little bit different than that levy change we saw earlier because it includes a slight $10,000 increase in our expected pilot payments. And then to finish balancing our budget, we're going to use appropriated reserves from our ERS, Employee Benefits Reserve, and Unemployment Reserve. Same levels that we've used the last few years. It's a modest amount and still maintain healthy levels in our reserve balances. We'll use $630,000 from our debt service funds. That's money we have set aside to offset the cost of our debt service. And using $1 million in fund balance, which still continues the progression that we've been making over the years of bringing that number down. So again, $88 million budget, 3.3% increase. Reserve history for you, our balance as of June 30th, 2021, when we closed our books, and where the balances stand today. The differences that you would see in the balances today is that we have withdrawn the money from the ERS reserve to make our December invoice payment. But our balances still continue to be strong and meet the obligations of the district and meet what's laid out in our reserve plan. The unassigned fund balance is what we set when we close our books. That's our 4% of unassigned fund balance as allowed by law, and the $1 million of assigned appropriated fund balance to balance our budget. So this budget includes, as I mentioned earlier, all current educational programs based on the needs and enrollment as of today. As things change, our programs can adjust with it, but as things stand today, everything is maintained. We have additional funds for instructional equipment to continue putting more technology in students' hands and maintaining the necessary replacement cycle. A pilot program through BOCES for a middle school alternative ed program. A pilot program in-house for girls wrestling and flag football. An expansion of our secondary music program. We've developed a sustainability plan for the various ARP-funded positions that Tony had presented on back in March. We're bringing a speech teacher back from BOCES, so we have an in-district full-time speech teacher. We're contracting with both Arnott and Guthrie, hopefully next year, to have expanded athletic trainer services at our athletic events. And we've allocated funds for high school lunch periods for student coverage.
As we continue our tag team, we will be asking the community of Horseheads to come out to act upon 3 propositions that the board has discussed. Proposition 1 would be the adoption of the 22-23 budget as we've just presented over the various 2.5 months, as the proposition reads. And then also annually to keep our bus fleet in top shape and moving forward, the purchase of the buses, of course, that is to acquire 7 full-size buses and 1 four-wheel drive transportation vehicle at a maximum aggregate cost of $1.4 million, which is offset by the 5-year bonding and the state aid. And then I think I got to do one more. Proposition number 3, as we are trying to be good financial stewards, we've used capital reserves in the past for project number 1 and project number 2, and now we need to establish a capital reserve fund so that if the district has surpluses at the end of each year, we can try to offset that community local component for any third project needed to fully overhaul the entire district, which is the final of the 3 planned projects, and then it would be on to upkeep or any additional projects in the future, which that's a long way off, but we want to make sure we do good financial planning for it, so there's the proposition for that. All of these propositions only need simple majority to pass, 50% of the vote plus 1, and that would be heading off to our election day vote on the 17th of May. Also on the 17th of May is the Board of Education election up this year are for 3 seats. These 3 seats are up for elections, and we've had 4 candidates that filed applications, and the draw was held at 9 o'clock yesterday morning. In the order that they will appear on the ballots, the candidates are Daniel Christmas, Asfar Azi Faruqi, Liz Odell Wheeling, and Marianne Holleran Corbett. The candidates forum will be on Thursday, May 5th, following the 6 p.m. public hearing here in the auditorium, with the public hearing going first and the candidates forum immediately following the public hearing. That is basically the presentation of the budget at this point. Is there any questions or any discussion from the board?
So going over the actual budget, and as I'm seeing my time being able to use this sunset with my newbie card, Tom, the BOCES, there are some significant increases in BOCES. I assume central data processing is due to the extra technology being brought on, but it looks like BOCES and capital expense, curriculum, and also occupational education has gone up by a significant amount of money. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, we've discussed this several times in our previous presentations over the past 2.5 months. BOCES cost for CTE, as well as the new pattern and platform for IT technology have seen significant increases. One is BOCES has lost a number of students, and that drives up the CTE cost, as well as the new formatting to try to maximize aid for the district is going under a new leadership of instructional technology, Mr. Steve Andrus, who was just brought in the middle of the year, and that is major budget adjustments for everybody.
And in one of those presentations, Tom, you talked about, having that conversation with BOCES. Is that something you see as a trend as far as advocating for us?
It's going to be a trend with BOCES because as people develop services across 21 districts, we have one of the 3 largest shares. So if we may not even buy into the service, we still have a larger share that we have to contribute as a collaborative of the BOCES program.
Okay.
Okay.
And then my last question, with the property tax report card, with the line saying the adjusted restricted fund balance, column D saying the actual 21-22 is $15,609,000, which was reflected, but then listing the estimated 22-23 at $7 million. Was there a reason for that reduction?
That comes from, with a successful project vote, we allocated $10 million to the project. We can move $10 million from the reserve to the capital fund, which is offset by our year-end projection of what we think we're going to be able to fund in the new capital reserve if it's approved.
Oh, okay.
It's a timing thing of the reserves and how we're required to report it on the report card.
Making this like a snapshot?
Yeah, just a projection.
Okay.
It's like one of the things on the report card is look at enrollment. The enrollment projection is, I think, 3583 for this year. Well, actually, we're at 3872. What it is, they don't count pre-K and they don't count all the students that are district students that are outplacement. So they have a specific calculation, which if we go by our actual enrollment right now, our actual enrollment is 3882, which is a little bit bigger, and we got about an increase of 3, which means we're no longer going down. But what's hidden and people don't realize is that we have an extra 100 students on homeschooling still because of COVID. So if those 100 students, which we do project to be back soon, we normally have 100, we have about 200 in homeschool. If those 100 come back, we've increased by 102 students over our past, which is a sign of potential prosperity and growth in the district for our population. Yes? Oh, you can, look at it. I will give you the microphone right here.
You don't even know what I'm going to say. Being a proud Horseheads resident for going on 44 years now, 44 budgets and taxes and so forth, this is just wonderful. Wonderful does not seem like the appropriate adjective. It's beyond wonderful. And also seeing that we are not cutting projects, we are not cutting program, we are not cutting staff at the same time. And then the list towards the end of your presentation of some new things that are being added. Extra help for the middle schoolers who need some extra care. The athletic trainers, having my own children who played sports. Plus, the enhancement of this capital project and what our district is looking like these days. Thank you. Thank you, Katie, and your staff, and Dr. Douglas, and the administrators, and everybody that put this together. I just think it's phenomenal. Bravissimo.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson? You want my mic? It's louder. No,
mine is
yours
actually
doing pretty good.
Really loud tonight. I want to piggyback on what Marianne said, because I think this is the snowball effect that we've wanted for a while. Our district valuation has been going up steadily. And then I think all of us saw like what Corning had done with their facilities. They moved way beyond where we were at. And they became a very serious rival to new families moving to the area, whether they would move into Corning or move in here. I think, particularly under your leadership, Dr. Douglas, what you've done is we invested in the facilities, we did all the groundwork, everything we needed to do to get this ball rolling. I think the public, the community has noticed, and I think that's paying off in dividends in terms of people now investing here. People want to come to Horseheads now, see what these new facilities end up looking like, which I believe will be on par, with what Corning has, if not exceed
We're going to
that.
be better.
Well, I don't want to be too much of a homer, but I think there might have been some fear before of like, our high school is fine, our test scores are great, like our faculty is amazing. Do we really need like top-line facilities? And I think this is the answer is yes. Yes, we do. We needed this investment. We needed, because this lifts all the boats, this work. And I think, Dr. Douglas, you've been a great leader in all this, and you have that, enthusiasm for the capital project and the finances here that have really elevated our game here. And so I appreciate your leadership, and Katie's trying to pull all this together. And
She has to work with me.
well, and I give her full credit for that. I do have one question. On the proposition for the buses, it's not directly relevant to the wording, but we all, I think, saw that the budget now has emissions-free buses.
Zero emissions by
Zero
the
emissions.
start of 2027.
Is that going to start with this purchase, or
No.
not yet? We're not ready.
Here's one of the things. Actually, I'm going to be taking an impromptu trip to Ithaca tomorrow because an electric bus company is setting up a demo of buses they're shipping to Texas, and they're taking a stop to let us know about their great services and that they'll help us with this. We are going to have to proceed cautiously on that. There's several reasons. The zero emission is the right intent. The hard part for school districts, especially in what's considered upstate or rural upstate, we have a 269 square mile district versus downstate where some of the districts are 1 square mile, 5 square miles. You can see the differences that an electric vehicle, especially the size of a bus, has to travel over a 5 square mile or maybe 20 miles to compete with 20 different schools versus Horseheads that has to do 268 during the day and then maybe send buses out to Binghamton, Norwich, and so forth. The capacity for the buses is very limited. I would have wished that they would have said, hey, we will get to a percentage by this year, another percentage, up to, say, 80 or 85%, and keep some of the fossil fuels. And I'm probably be upsetting people. I'm not trying to, but the reality is our buses have to go up mountains. And electric buses lose their load and charge, especially over miles. I don't ever want to say we can't go pick somebody up because the bus won't make it up the hill, or we can't go somewhere because the bus will die before it gets to there, and we'll have to pull off to a bus service center or another school district, and they just happen to have different charging systems than ours because there's no unified charging system. Those are things, as we met yesterday, that are probably going to be amended and amended over the next 5 to 7 years once the legislature understands that best intentions have to be well thought out, not just done from January until now and say everybody's going to comply. Keeping politics out of it, a lot of politicians, especially Western New York, said climate change, whether they believe it or not, is one thing, but going 100% electrified buses is a wonderful, noble ideal. But when we get the electricity from coal-fired plants in all of Western New York, from Pennsylvania, how is that addressing the environment? I think they're going to have to find some type of balance over the time. So I think that's not part of this purchase. We need to talk and consult, and it's probably 1 or 2 years, 3 years down the road. We may invest in 1 or 2 and see how that happens. But here's the other part. We're about to put in a $3 million parking lot for the bus garage. The state requires 15 years before you can touch it again. So how do I put that in, which I'm obligated to do now because we're closing out the project and we have to be done by December. It goes this summer. And then come in and put electrification all throughout the parking lot because I have to break it all up. And yet the state won't give me aid to put back down the parking lot. Those are some of the things they never thought about. And there's probably 40 or 50 school districts that are doing that this year. So if we can do it slow and steady, we might be able to do the perimeters at first because you can get to those areas. It needs to be well thought out, and we're going to take a wait and see, but we're doing our homework now. But here's the other thing, and it's good that you brought up that question. 7 full-size school buses. They're about 140, 150,000 apiece. 7 full-size electric school buses are going to be 350 to 450 each. Supposedly, the state is going to pay for all of it. I have never seen the state pay for everything. So patience is probably the better part of valor here.
Thank you.
Just briefly, because I know we talked about the budget in depth at our budget hearing the other night, but I just want to echo the comments of my fellow board members. I think it's a very fiscally prudent budget. I'm proud that we're able to add additional funds for programs across the spectrum of whether educational, extracurricular, athletic. We're able to maintain and add, and in a way that will, thankfully, because of the financial viability of the district, will actually reduce ultimately the rate for residents. So I think I just echo the commendation for you, Dr. Douglas, and for Katie and everyone that's worked on this. And I appreciate the faith that the community has had in us in terms of the support for previous budgets and the support for our capital projects. And I certainly think this is a very, very strong budget and a very fiscally prudent one. So, I'm very supportive of it. Thank you.
Others? I'll bring you a mic. So, ladies and gentlemen, one last time, I put this one up because I've never been able to put something up like this. And these, we pride ourselves in, and I know Katie tries to hold me back at times, but we pride ourselves, and I pride myself that having Katie do the diligence of the check. When she came to me today and she said, "You got to see this," and she looked and she's like, "I can't believe this," so I'm thinking I made a mistake. Then she had Ann Parasolo check it. No, and even then, it was, let's call our tax collector and make sure we didn't miss anything. All 3 of them came up with these numbers. And that's based on most of the assessments are in. We're just going through assessment challenge time. But this is what Katie has done. She's tried to call them, and there's not many people challenging their assessments. So there's not a likelihood that this is going to change much. If anything, more assessments will be finalized, and it will potentially press it even farther down, and that's been our history. I'm very proud of Katie and her team, my team, because we pride ourselves on trying to make sure we tell the truth. And we pride ourselves not trying to hype something and not have it come through. And as you can see from this, each time over the 7 years, we've said these same exact projections. And except for 18, 19, 19, 20, they still went down. They just didn't go down as far. But they were always within our conservative estimate or beyond. Like, I think last year we estimated that it might go down -2. It ended up going down almost 4%. So, for most school districts in this area, look at the public hearing, we're going to be putting up Corning's tax rate. We're going to be putting up Elmira's Elmira Heights. If this district taxed at those levels that you're going to see, we'd have an extra $30, $40 million a year in Horseheads. And we don't need to do that, but just imagine if we did have that. What could be done for our community? What could be done for our kids? But the good part is we do it less than everybody else and still have some of the top, if not the top, outcomes. So, ladies and gentlemen, are we ready to move on to the board meeting and adopt this budget? That concludes our presentation. I want to thank everybody for their help, and we will put this into the trust of the Horseheads community after the vote. Thank you. Oh, did I do that? I don't know if I did that. I think I did. Just the dates real quick. May 5th is the public hearing, as well as the board candidate forum immediately following. And Tuesday, May 17th, the district-wide budget vote and Board of Education elections in the high school South Gym, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Absentee ballots are available under application by contacting Ms. Terry Clark. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas and Katie, for the presentation. Dr. Douglas, you had mentioned, how we stack up against the other local districts, and we are very favorable. We saw the numbers a couple nights ago, and it's pretty remarkable the many dollars differential between Horseheads and most of the other communities. The other thing that's pretty amazing, too, is you'd showed the chart of the last 15 years, and 15 years ago, we were $19.40, our tax rate. If you took a very modest 2% increase and kind of went 15 years out, we should be in the $24, $25 range per thousand. And
Which
is
is similar to the other districts.
It really is. And we're going to be below $17, which is just tremendous, because 2% really doesn't sound terrible sometimes. But where we were 15 years ago, if you would have just done a modest 2%, it'd be $25. So it's pretty incredible. Appreciate all the hard work, everybody, to put this together. And it was certainly a nice surprise to see the final numbers tonight. So thank you for the presentation and the good news. We move on to item 6, the report from the superintendent.
I have given the best report I think possible for tonight, but I wanted to provide time for not only Katie, but my other colleague, Mr. Tony Gill, my assistant superintendent, to go over some of the things that we are doing now to start addressing some of our summer learning, as well as heading into next year and some of our curriculum development. Mr. Gill?
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. So I'm just going to mention a couple things that we have in the hopper and things that we're working on, give some regular updates to our work. One large piece of the work we're doing right now is our Summer Learning Academy. You would have heard us talking about the set-aside money and the grant money required. We've been meeting regularly. Today we actually met with some teacher input. We met with some feedback from who should we prioritize in this work? As much as we want to open it up to as many students as possible to try to get into our doors during the summer to do this work, we do have certain parameters when it comes to facilities and the way we have the buildings that we have accessible. So we really want to make sure we have a clear idea of who we want to invite, and working with Rich today, thinking about who we're going to, the transportation side of it, because we know that often in the summer, that's one of the biggest barriers to students attending a summer program is, how do I get my kid there? It's a half-day program. So we've removed that barrier for at least 2 years of this grant. We're currently working on the parameters to who to invite. And then as we go through that process, we're looking at a very strong ELA and math intervention, but we also want to bring in all special areas. We're excited to think about what PE, and working with Charles on, bringing in PE and some kind of the recess time and play within their learning. We're talking about K through 6 students, 6th grade, engaged in this throughout about 4 weeks during the summer. So we're in the stage right now where I would guess within the next 2 weeks we'll be going out to our staff and asking and expecting some staff members to step up and support this program and to work, obviously, with compensation and to do that work with our students. And we'll be working with them on the curriculum. We'll get the site supervisor. We'll start getting things. Mike and I, even just walking in today, Coghlan, we're talking about where the locations are and all the logistics that will need to happen. So very exciting work happening in that. This is a program that is very similar to what we were able to offer as a district several years ago. This is not a new program to the district. It used to be a title grant funded money where students that were, it's called Summer Learning Academy, that were identified by the state assessments would be offered this opportunity. However, it didn't have the transportation and it didn't have a lot of what we're able to offer this time around with this grant funded money. With success, we'll have to think about the sustainability and how we continue this program into the future. The main point of the program, however, for these next 2 years is to really consider those experiences that students lost in the last 2 years, and how do we address what those experiences, and how do we make sure that we're moving our students forward successfully. We have plenty of data sets and things that we're looking at and teacher observations to help with that work and to determine how to best move forward. So great input from our ENL crew, our RTI team, and our school psychs to really try to qualify the type of student we would want to make sure we get there. So that work is ongoing. Like I said, next couple of weeks we'll get that. We'll start staffing that, or at least canvassing and invites for the students we want. After that priority is done, we might look at other opportunities of space and what other enrichment activities can we offer. But as you know, our first priority is to address learning and those that are struggling the most. So that's that work there. I did briefly bring up state assessments. I want to just mention, we did have our ELA and we have our math state assessments going on right now. It's been a hiatus from this for the 3 through 8. We're projected to have the regions back in place in June. Big change in our ELA and math in the 3 through 8 is we're going computer-based testing. We've had it at the 7-8 and the 5-6 for a couple of years now. This is the first year we're moving down to the grades 3 and 4 on these assessments and on the computer-based. It's coinciding in a nice time period to which we're enhancing the technology usage with our students and the technology in their hands. There's going to be some bumps, and I've often said from this podium that this is a one-shot measure of a teacher and the students and how they do in that class. It's a snapshot, and it's not the end-all, be-all of what we do with our students. Assessments happen every day and are continually happening with our teachers. This just provides us an accountability measure and a nice, good idea where we stand as a group. And traditionally, Horsehead says we've done wonderfully in these assessments, but the shift to CBT, I'd be remiss to say some people are just making sure everything gets off all right and making sure it works okay. So I think we're in good hands with, we have Sean McDonough and Bill Giancolli leading that up and working with the principals to ensure success. So computer-based testing in math happens next week in 3 through 8. We've also been selected, you recall previous years, we've been selected to do field testing for the state to determine what tests questions they might take. We've been, again, tagged to do some field testing. We will comply and go along with that to assist and try to make it a minimal impact to our students' day. But I know that was a large conversation we've had in the past, or a big conversation. The other heavy thing that's going into the summer is our curriculum work, of course. We've been allocated lots of additional money as well to support extra curriculum work, to identify units of study to help students and teachers and the instruction of students that might have had some missed opportunities these past 2 years. Really, we're gonna continue on with our ELA and math. It's important to remember that a couple years ago, we talked about ELA and math being on a 3-year to 5-year track, lining up with the state assessment change. With COVID, everything got bumped, right? Every state assessment has not been, they changed those dates. We're still on track. We did take the capacity to do the work did dwindle during COVID. It was just a fact that we talked about during our meetings here, that we need to pick that back up. With the addition of 2 instructional support coaches that we had a couple years back, and Tiffany and Kelly and our instructional team, we are kickstarting that and moving it forward quite quickly. So our ELA and our math work, specifically in the primary and the elementary levels, is being kickstarted this summer. We are opening up PE and looking at our physical education. One thing that we hold very true and tight is that it's not gym class. It's physical education. It's lifelong learning, how to be healthy. And so we're making sure we meet that standard as far as our education and the professionals that we have teaching those courses. We find the same thing in our music education classes. It's not band, it's music education. And we look to promote music education and the lifelong learning that goes with that. So music as well, we'll have some intensive work this summer to understand the curriculum design and to continue their work. PE will be new and Charles will be working with Tiffany and her team on that. Kelly and the special ed is making sure that we're going to have a continuum and we're lock in step with general ed. It's a great partnership we have happening that we're very proud of to make sure that all students are having this experience, something we hold very true in this district, all students moving forward in the vision that we have to provide these opportunities. And so the continuum of work that they're doing, and in the SEL, I've mentioned this before, the social emotional learning and the work that they're doing in looking at behavioral, academic, and social emotional assistance. And the board has been generous to offer those the social workers, master's level, and now we have them in each of our buildings to really move that work to the forefront. And that also will be included in our summer academy. We're actually going to, with those students that we're inviting that are having, academic issues primarily, not to discount the social emotional. So we'll have social emotional aspect to that work as well this summer. So that's kind of a quick capture. I know sometimes if I talk too much about my passion of curriculum instruction, I start to see some glazed over, and I want to make sure that I'm addressing and you're getting what you need and have any questions, so I make sure I address them. But there's one other exciting piece of work, of course, we're doing right now, and that's capital project design groups. If you're not familiar, we meet with all stakeholders. We've been at Ridge Road. We met our first group there. We met twice now with Big Flats teams, calling in each certain grade levels, the special areas, and the kitchen group, the cafeteria group, and talking about design and layout and what they wish and what they want it to look like. We've met with Gardner Road as well. We'll have a second meeting coming with Gardner Road and a second meeting with Ridge Road. Probably will not come until the end of the year or into the fall because of their timeline with the state. And we'll, of course, bring Center Street. What's important here is that we are very cognizant of the cultural aspect we have happening with Center Street in the future and ensuring that they're a part of that. So even like, for instance, at Big Flats, we had a team member come in and provide some feedback on design for Big Flats classroom that, in fact, in the project wasn't being done at Big Flats. The reason is that even though we weren't doing a third grade classroom at Big Flats, we're doing a third grade classroom over at Ridge Road. So we better get every third grade teacher the opportunity, or at least some feedback loop from every building, because it starts to set the precedent of what all the third grade classrooms might look like. So we have to, even though their building's not being touched right away in the current project, we want to make sure we're getting that feedback now from all groups. So some great feedback, some great work being done with Hunt and the back and forth conversation to ensure that we design these rooms and we're matching at the same time all this curriculum, so they're hand in hand. We had a unique opportunity as a district when we did the 2030 to say we're going to change the brick and mortar, and at the same time we're going to look at the instruction. And we're not just going to do the same old thing in these new nice rooms, that we're going to be cognizant of pairing that and matching that and bringing both standards up. Yes, meeting the standard of Corning, but maintaining and exceeding our current standard in academics. Okay, now I'm done.
Questions for Tony?
It's a quick question. I know you said for the Summer Learning Academy, you're still working through the process of sort of who would get invited.
Yeah.
But do you have and if you said this and I missed it, I apologize. Do you have a general idea of how many students it might serve?
Great question. So in the K through 6 environment, we're really trying to focus on smaller class sizes. If we can get 10 to 15 in a class, I think there's much more remediation and assistance that can happen, and the student doesn't get lost. If we're able to secure 10 to 12 rooms, by the math involved, we're hoping to hit over 150 students, K through 6. So it's going to be a difficult task. We are to prioritize, because of course we want to open our doors to as many as possible.
Yeah, I think adding on that, Tony, is also we have to have the instructional staff to do it.
Yeah.
What's really nice is we've been having discussions with our HTA, and they have said that many people are interested. So once we know, we're relying on our staff to help bring our students along, and we look forward to them stepping forward. We know that this is something they very much want.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and obviously I know it's complicated in terms of the logistics for the locations, and it's great that what you said, Dr. Douglas, about the support from the teachers, and if we can reach that many students, that'll be really impactful, so that's great, thank you.
Yes, Mary.
I just want to say that I'm so happy to hear that the Summer Learning Academy is on its way, because when we did the tours of the schools back in March, I believe it was, and then had the after-school chats with the teachers, that was a really strong concern of theirs because of the gaps the children had because of COVID. And it sounds like you are well on your way to planning that. And I'm just really glad that it's going to be happening for our children. Thank you.
We did have all intent, it was going to happen last year, but then construction, a lot of things, barriers presented themselves, and it was unfortunate. But I'm hopeful that we have sustainability in this. It was a successful program in the past, and even if we're just serving 50 students that need it through a process, it does us as a system well.
With respect to the computerized testing of the children in grade school,
Yeah.
were there any complications, things that you're going to have to be aware of in the future? Did the students respond well to it, or were they better with pen and pencil?
So this is, we have some trend history prior to COVID with our middle school and IS starting this process. I think one thing that we're going to have to see is, and everybody's wondering, and we've been talking about the keyboarding skills, right? And what keyboarding skills looks like at those lower age. We try not to, age appropriateness of screen time is an ongoing conversation. As easy as it is to hand the kid an iPad and say, keep yourself busy, there's a screen time appropriateness in our classrooms, but there's also a need to teach the computer skills required to go through that. So we've had simulations all year available for teachers to give to their students to go through the simulations, or various forms of the simulations, I should say, to prep for this. The one thing that there's a wonder, to be honest, is on the use of a finger on the touch screen and how that plays out. The part 2 of the math might require some of that, but there's also a tool within the program that allows you to draw the shape. So it's kind of like you could use a finger, but you can also use the shape. So that's one of the conversations we're having, is the keyboard and the use of the stylus, and is that something that needs to happen? Our early input says no. As far as the stylus, the computer program, this past year we have implemented back to a very basic keyboarding program back into our classrooms, and we're going to keep continuing that work in our earlier grade levels, with the understanding of how do we work that without too much screen time. So keyboarding and stylus use are the wonders. We don't have results, as this test hasn't been offered in quite some time. But it was important for me enough to put it on the radar to wonder what these results might look like, and to keep in mind they're just a snapshot of one day of our work. 40 minutes or I can tell you that the ELA first, some grade levels had a lot of extra time. The students took more time.
That's the biggest thing across the state, is the state does the right ideal of putting the concept into place, but they don't necessarily have the real-time data, and all school districts were saying it just took more time than the regular paper and pencil. But I also believe, like many of my colleagues, it's because it's still new, and they're still trying to figure out how to do it. It's like Tony's saying with the stylus, or pulling a drop down for a square or a triangle. Each are correct, but if the students don't know how to do the drop down, or the teachers didn't know how to do the drop down, when do we teach that learning? And it's sort of like, Warren, when you were teaching social studies, all of a sudden that extra question would come out that nobody would expect. It's the same thing, but you've got to go through the cycle. In many years, I think it will become very standard hat, so to speak, but it's still a ways away.
Yeah, so you have a new idea of how to do the assessments, CBT, as Tom says. You have the wonder on the level of student engagement in that task after COVID, and their resiliency to do that task is a question that's out there as well. And then I can say on the tech side, the actual administration of the assessment is spot on. We like it because it's much quicker and more efficient, and the work to be able to get a student to be able to take the test, the process is strong. It's now, how do we appropriately build to that without teaching to the test, because that's something we're always conscious of as well, because of that one snapshot of this test.
So if I understood, the test took longer. Did everybody finish it, or?
Students are provided the time. There is no time limit on
all
the
right.
assessment.
We gave them plenty of time, but the
Okay.
longer it goes, it can frustrate people, and especially when they only expected maybe an hour, hour and a half.
And it wasn't all grade levels. This was the ELA assessment. We just found certain grade levels, a student took sometimes, 3 hours to complete it, where in the past it might have been 40 minutes. And there's the wonder, was it the assessment itself? Was it the post-COVID, stamina issue? Was it the new technology? There was wonders that go into that.
And could I have one other question? With the academy, the summer academy, is there I don't know what the right word here is there a selection process where you filter people out, or how does that work? I mean, how do we select the students that we are going to service?
Yeah, I was referencing how we've gotten some input from some key stakeholder groups that are involved in their daily work with students, as well as with our principals, to determine how do we rubric this, how do we determine, who's selected. It's not an easy task. We have to consider, first of all, we have processes of like a SIM process, to which a teacher can recommend a student into a process to get remediation or get additional help, right? Your student intervention teams. So we have that to look at, and plenty of data sets to look there. We have our RTI teachers who do their records, their running records, their daily work and assessments with a certain group of students that get pull-out services or maybe push in. Same with our ENL team. So we have some solid, like Ames Web data and running records, and some solid data sets, as well as the teacher narrative from who they think is struggling in their classroom, social, emotionally, or academic. Our difficult task ahead is to how do we prioritize, and how do we select, because of the capacity and the resources available. So that conversation happened this morning, our brainstorm, to kind of figure out what criteria we're going to look to first to determine qualifying factors. I don't have an answer to it, but those are some of the conversations we had. We also talked about attendance. We also talked about 100% remote learners. And are they a struggling population right now? What does the data set say on them? What do current report cards say? So lots of what ifs, and none of the people at the table want to discount a student, but resources dictate we have to prioritize. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Just on some of the other areas, just to keep the board apprised, some of the things we're looking at in the sort of the year to come, we're looking at some advanced course at the middle school. We're looking at possibly fundraising and trying to minimize it for educational opportunities to make sure every student, and this is something that superintendents across the region have been discussing. We sometimes have students that are in our district that maybe we have like a senior trip or a junior trip or an activity that some students don't participate because they may not have the funds and they may not say anything. But as superintendents, we are looking at it as there is educational benefit for students that are in our communities to sometimes get out of our communities to see the educational opportunities that a lot of kids get, say like from a senior trip or a senior ball, a junior ball, that are immeasurable to the student's life. And we're struggling with that, so I want the board to understand that we are trying to talk as a region of how we can possibly make sure that our general fund ensures that all students have certain basic opportunities, and it's not about fundraising and so forth. My gut is the board would certainly understand that, and I think our community would probably appreciate that, because oftentimes we send a box of chocolates to grandma 24 times a year, or pizzas, or carnations, or I know, what are the red ones, Mrs. Holler, the flowers that come out? Geraniums. I know I got to buy them in another couple weeks. But what happens is we put immense pressure on people, and sometimes the students don't come forth because they don't know who to go to. And as much as we can, I think we owe it to our community to try to broaden the horizons of all. No different than from the state, we want to broaden the horizons of everybody with food insecurity. And I'm hoping that the state is going to go through with the universal food program, as the federal government will be bringing it to an end at the end of this year. In addition, we want to explore some potential options of financial literacy in our business department. So these are some of the things that, just like I drive Katie nuts, I have to drive Tony nuts too. So as we go through it, we will be starting to set some of those planks to move forward in the coming of the year. But we may need also the board's support to possibly codify it as potential requirements. So as we do those studies, we'll bring more back from the board. But with this budget, we have a lot of opportunities, but that doesn't mean the opportunities just stop and we're ready to move to next year. So just some of the things to keep an eye on that we're working on. And after tonight, if we get out in time, our first girls flag football program is having their first practice tonight. So please join me and go out to the field. Thank you all.
Great, thank you for the updates. We move on to the President's Report. Item 7 tonight, there was no audit committee this past month, so I'll turn over to Doug for the Policy Committee update.
Okay, we met on April 7th. We tabled the diversity, equity, and inclusion policy for at least one more meeting. We'll hopefully bring that forward in the near future. Otherwise, we reviewed class rank and a whole slew of special ed policies. We had a legal review of virtually all these policies, and there was no need except for one to put forward any revisions or changes, so we'll be bringing forth 4321.4 independent educational evaluations is the first reading tonight with some changes, but everything else was found to be appropriate in its current form.
Great, thanks for the update. Looks like a busy meeting, so thank you. Move on to item 8 tonight, the finance items for action. It's recommended that the board approve finance items 8.02 up to 8.25. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Any questions, comments, concerns on any of the items tonight? Doug?
Okay, I'll need a little bit of time here, but first of all, I've got a question for Katie, and I'm sorry I didn't pull you aside earlier. On the 8.06, the budget transfers report, there is a print shop charge there. Is that the BOCES print shop? I assume it is, but under, this is the first set of changes
Yes.
there.
Yes, it is.
BOCES print shop. Okay. So with that, then I will need to abstain. I have to abstain on, sorry, I should have this memorized at this point, 8.09, which is the BOCES administrative budget. My salary and benefits are directly in that budget, so it would be a conflict of interest for me to vote on that. And then to avoid the appearance of propriety as a BOCES employee, I'm going to abstain on 8.06 and 8.08 and 8.10. I think are all the BOCES related items.
Do you have that, Candy? Yes, I do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions besides the 4 that Doug mentioned, 806, 808, 809, and 810? Any other abstentions? Okay, great, thank you. Move on to item 9 tonight, the personnel items for action. It's recommend the board approve item 9.02, the HR recommendations. Need a motion? Questions or comments on 9.02? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Thank you. Move on to miscellaneous items for action tonight under section 10. We have items 10.02 up to 10.05. We need board action, so need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on any of those 4 items? Doug?
Again, as a BOCES employee, I would have conflict of interest in voting for BOCES board members, so I will abstain on that item.
Understand on that one, yep. Any other questions, comments? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And any abstentions besides Doug on 10.03? Okay, great. We'll move on to item 12. Under the board policies, we have only one item there for first reading, which requires no action. Any comments or questions for the policy committee on that? Okay, move on to item 13, board member comments this evening. Warren, go ahead.
Did the middle school, intermediate school cafeteria open?
Yes, it did.
All right.
I would like to share on that, Warren. You don't smell the roses a lot.
Mike, could you come up to the
Mike?
microphone, please? Thank you.
I do. I think it's a good thing. We should share.
Good.
Oh, I was about to share something too.
Oh, no.
Go ahead.
No, but I'm scared. But that we did open up Monday for, and kind of chaos at first. First of all, you got that age of kids for the first time, but to see the smile on their face,
Yep.
to see them walking through, that's what we do it for. And hats off to the food staff, because I've already heard from multiple students walking around that the menu that we're providing, we were in a temp kitchen, let's be honest. It's like getting at Sugar Creek, but it's a great food out there, but just all positive things. We're working them out. We used it for a couple other things, but as of Monday morning after break, as we said, they were back in there. And the fondest thing was to see it. Tuesday morning, which I'm going to get tore up because I canceled facilities for snow, so I'm going to beat Mr. Douglas.
I wasn't even going to bring that up.
And I'm glad we didn't get it, but it really warranted a lot going back Tuesday morning to fix a few things that we walked into that were normal to come in. So, yeah, we're open. I would challenge anyone if they're up there, maybe a board can get out to see it, but the faces, the kids, to hear what they're talking about, it was good, all good.
To help you understand, I have a 12-year-old that is in 7th grade there, and I absolutely went on vacation, came back, everything else started to hit me, forgot about it, opening up, and boy, did I catch it when I got home. Because my son always brings his lunch because he was not happy trying to get certain food because it was a different environment, like you said. And he went in and he was so mad because he brought lunch and they had pizzas. And everybody was talking about the pizzas. They're hot, they're new, they're fresh. There's many pizzas.
Tom, they're triangular.
They're triangular too. They've got cuts, yes. And so he dumped his lunch and started all of a sudden ringing up food on the pay school account, which we haven't used in a while, and it said I'd owed money. So that's how I found out. And then the next day, while I was thinking about facilities, he called me and said they don't have hamburgers. Now, my kid doesn't eat a hamburger to save his life unless it's plain. But he said, Dad, everybody was buying doubles and triples. They ran out. So that's what we are hearing from the kids, and we knew that. It's similar to what happened at the high school when it opened up. COVID has taken a whole different tone because of different things and different avenues, but once we start reopening, the high school sees so many different things. I even heard from teachers, they have a salad bar for us. And it's not just for the teachers. The kids have the salad bar. They can go up in the middle school. It's a little more open than the intermediate school. But in each of our cafeterias as we plan these, this is what is going to start happening. I think going back to Doug's comment, it's sort of like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Food service, especially, if you build an upgrade, they will come. And I think they're experiencing from the past to the future and we're starting to see it. So without busting on Mr. Coughlin anymore, he is a wonderful person. He is not Mother Nature, and I am not either, but he would have been more popular with all my son's friends because they probably would have gotten a 2-hour delay because I was also caught it for that too. So, but I hope everybody remembers right now we have a 4-day Memorial Weekend, so that will hopefully save me. Hopefully that helps, Warren.
I have a question about the opening of the gym. Is that occurring, or how's that scheduled?
Go ahead.
I was thinking of the same. All gyms are pretty much open back up. Yeah, I did report in my updates to you guys that the elementaries, as soon as the COVID rules changed, we were able to do it. Middle school is the last one. We've turned back over half of the large gym for the IS, which was a blessing for them. We're still working on the stage a little bit. You know, we still got COVID stuff to go with it, so we took part of the gym, which I got a very nice email from the music department, which I met on Monday up there to look. So one small portion on the high school side, we still have a temp kitchen in there. I got to get it out. I got to fix the floor. With that being said, we were able to, there's 60 kids doing band. That's what I set it up for Tuesday morning. And we've been able to take the portion using the hard doors, and they're set up, and it really opened it up. So phys ed and the answer to the gyms, yep, they're able to utilize them a little bit more, with the exception of the little temp kitchen area. We're fortunate to have them hard folding doors, so we partitioned it off for safe. I worked today trying to get a contractor in. We got to, get rid of it and save some of that equipment. So there's some work we'll put focus on getting that space back over.
I think also going a little forward on, I think some of your intent of the question, Mr. Adams, is that we're trying to be as open as possible, and one of the areas that Mike has tried very hard is in our area of our pool, not only our gyms like Big Flats basketball, outside communities. We're seeing more and more of them now being able to get access, but our pool was not able to, and it wasn't because it wasn't available, it is simply because there are no lifeguards out there trained at this point. I know we're doing summer cohesion. We're starting to see some of that. I know Mike is just starting to open it up. I think it's starting to open up for morning swims for our community.
This morning, 5:30 this morning, pool was open for public swim along with others. So that was something, not even an update. Earlier in the week, we were finalizing some lifeguards, proper supervision, or it works. So the pool.
So you're starting to see us returning as much as possible to normal. As long as the state doesn't get away, we are open.
Continuing to bring stuff back to rooms as they want it. We try to get it back, so thank you.
Stay there.
Mike.
I can hear you. You don't need that.
What happens to the equipment in the temporary kitchen? Is there a demand for auction for that, or that just goes to the kitchen graveyard?
We have a combination of stuff. We have stuff we've borrowed from Corning that will need to go back to them, that we hung on that through bow season, kind of a share. Joe Kilmer worked that out, that I've reached out to do they still want it back and where it'll go. We have stuff from Elmira City School District when they were doing kitchens we borrowed that will go back, and we have some that we salvaged out of our kitchens when we demoed to set up a temp kitchen. I really want to wrap our head around, we're about ready to get into the elementary cafeterias, and there will have to be some way of doing some type of temp stuff. So Mr. Kilmer and I are working right now what we want to save. There may be one or two things we'll look at auctions that'll go with that, but I don't want to really give it away right yet.
Yeah, we have to, with the elementary plans that are coming, because we will have some kitchen work in each of them, and we are in the process of trying to get that timeline, just so that the board knows. We are either shooting for the end of June or the July meeting for the official timeline to come out on how we are going to do the next project, because that timeline sets when Center Street closes, when we have to move things around, and how we are going going to be able to try to build 3 elementaries. As I've already told the board and several out in the community, there is no way we can build 3 elementaries all at once, so we have to pick what we can, and that's what Welliver and Hunt are working on, and that timeline, once that's established, starts our whole process. That should be, I'm pretty much estimating the July meeting.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Go ahead.
Just quickly, if you'll indulge me, I just wanted to echo, the comments about the cafeterias. I've got a 5th grader and a 8th grader, blown away by the new cafeteria. And then also at the middle school, I've one of my sophomore who would never buy lunch, is like your son, Dr. Douglas, and now buys lunch every day. And I think, the folks that work in the cafeterias tend to be an underappreciated group, right? And they work really hard, and that's such an important kind of common space for the building. And so it's really a wonderful improvement. And the only thing negative I would say, if Joe Kilmer's listening, is I did get a complaint that there was a lack of chicken tenders the other day. So maybe they were a popular meal item, I don't know. But Amelia, I told you I'd ask about the chicken tenders, so there you go.
Somebody's ordering triples.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, board. Really good questions tonight and great answers too. Good to hear everything's opening back up. So we'll move on to item 14. We just need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. We're good to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the regular Board of Education meeting for April and the adoption of the 22-23